Welcome into another edition of Scarbo Knows with Kevin Skarbinski. That's me, Kevin Skarbinski. Lots going on in the sports world this time of year, and most of the games are being played off of the field, away from the courts, in the courts, and other places. And to help us break it all down, get behind the scenes, better understand what is happening with the Family Iamaleava, with one of the best players who will be selected in the NFL draft, and other things. For example, the idea that journalism is not dead. That has a double meaning, as our guest today will explain. He's one of the best in the business, senior writer for Sports Illustrated. Let's say hello to Pat Forde, who is always fishing for stories. He landed a big one just recently on Travis Hunter. Pat, how are you doing today? Appreciate you joining us.
Hey, Kevin, happy to be on with you. Doing really well, and happy to talk, about fishing with Travis and everything else on your mind.
Yeah, that was a fascinating story just about him and his personality, and we'll get into that in a bit. But first of all, I'm always curious, as a journalist myself, a long time person fishing for my own stories, just how the whole concept came about. How were you able to wrangle Travis Hunter, the Heisman winner, into that boat?
Well, I have to give some credit to my oldest son, Mitchell Forde, who is the managing editor of Major League Fishing, and told me over a year ago, said, "Hey, I don't know whether you knew this, but Travis Hunter's a big-time fisherman. He loves bass fishing." He said, "You should see if you can fish with him sometime." I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's a good idea." And kind of put that, in the back pocket. And then, he had the season that he had, obviously, unlike anything really we've seen in more than 60 years in college football, given the two-way excellence of his performance on offense and defense. And he wins the Heisman Trophy, and he becomes a bigger and bigger deal. And we were talking, about who we wanted to put on the cover of Sports Illustrated's NFL Draft Preview magazine. And Hunter seemed like an obvious choice for that. And my boss said, "Well, you want to do the story?" I said, "Not only do I want to do the story, I said, here's what the story has to be. I've got to go fishing with him." He's like, "Really? You think you can do that?" I was like, "Yeah, I think so, actually." And called, and his people were like, "Yep, yeah, that sounds great," because he absolutely loves it, and he's really good at it. He is a elite level fisherman, something that he has done from his childhood growing up in Florida, fishing in the canals and ponds and really wherever he could there. And he's just kind of taken that and progressed throughout his life. He moved to Georgia, and it's just something that's always been a big part of his time away from football. And so pitched it, they caught it, they loved it, they said, "Let's do it." And then it was just a matter of pulling things together. He's training, or had been training, in Fort Worth, Texas, at this amazing ranch complex just outside of town. And so I was going to go meet him there, and I said, "Is there a place to fish? There's a million places to fish in Texas, but do you have a good spot?" He's like, "Got a great spot, a private lake 20 miles west." And so that's where we ended up doing it. And it was this kind of gigantic convergence of our photo crew, a video crew, a bunch of guys that brought in a bass boat because his boat had engine trouble. And then he jumped in the boat, he piloted the boat, he put us on the fish. He was in charge, and he knew what he was doing. And so it was a blast to do, just like you said, a different kind of story. And to be able to get that kind of one-on-one time with him and get kind of deeper into his personality, it was really a blast. One of my favorite stories I've ever done.
Well, it was a great read, and obviously, when you're going deep in a profile of someone, you want to make them as comfortable as possible. And after reading the story, it doesn't seem like you could put him in a more comfortable place than on a boat on a remote lake, doing the thing that he really loves to do, that he could do professionally, as you said in the story, but really it is his escape from his professional duties, soon to be as an NFL cornerback / wide receiver.
Yeah, exactly. This is his happy place. So, it wasn't like I was gonna ask him to, go sit in a stuffy restaurant or anything like that. I mean, like we're gonna do what he wants to do. And so uh he was incredibly comfortable, and yeah, just a, very accessible, um, kind of uncomplicated guy. He said, the only things I really like to do are play football and fish. And he also plays video games, but that's really it. And so, this was very much something that uh, I could understand as we got into this why he was so amenable to doing the story, because, like, yeah, this is actually fun for me. Even having a sports writer along turned out to not be that terrible for him. Um, but so yeah, he and his people, and he had a lot of people around, his agency and various groups of folks, but he just like got on the boat and got away and just forgot all about that stuff.
How much fun was, the journalism aside, just the experience of being on a boat? Obviously, you know what you're doing with a rod and reel in your hands as well. But how much fun was it? And what did you learn about him? The line, "I told you I was a great teammate," resonated from the story, because he did go to bat for you to help you get one of those fish in the boat.
Yeah, yeah. So no, it was fantastic. Like, I know how to fish. He knows more than I know. He's a little better at it than I am, but I've, done a lot of fishing in the last 20 years because my kids got into it, and obviously one of them now, that's part of his profession. But um so, this was like, I kind of did the interview in his truck. We were driving 20 miles. It was like a half an hour in the truck, and I did the interview in the truck, and then we got to the lake and we're done, and then we're just hanging out, and we're talking, and we're trying to find fish and catching them. And uh yeah, the parts of his personality that came out that were very interesting. One, he kind of liked being in charge. Like, I'm driving the boat here. I'm putting us on the fish. So, that was fine because he did know what he was doing. But then the other part of it, he really wanted me to catch fish. He wasn't like, just, hey, I'm going to go out here and catch fish, and I don't really care how you do. Just kind of stay out of my way. No, no, he really wanted me to get some action out of the day. And we 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 found, some pockets where they were, cast it in, and I got a big one on the line pretty early on. And I started, I set the hook and I started reeling, and I'm getting a fight. And I realized pretty quickly, oh no, I hadn't set the drag, which is the tension on the line. I had not, I had just bought the rod the day before. I went into, Orvis or whatever, and bought a rod and reel and stuff. And because I'd flown in, this was in March. Like, the next day I was at the SEC basketball tournament. So this was kind of just
Yeah.
fitting this in. And I hadn't set the drag, and so I'm like, "Oh no, this fish is gonna get away." And he just stopped. He had been piloting the boat up front, from with the trolling motor, and he just stopped and came over and adjusted the drag for me. And then he was the one that got down and lipped the fish and got it into the boat for me. So he, as he said, yes, I'm a great teammate. He was into it, into helping me catch my fish. And then afterwards, he was into himself catching his fish too. He was fired up.
What did you learn about him from a personality standpoint, from the time in the truck, the time on the boat? I know you talked about a little bit in the story his relationship with Deion Sanders, his head coach. And what really struck me in reading the story was he comes across, Travis Hunter does, almost as the anti Deion. Dion embraces the spotlight. He seeks the spotlight. He's comfortable. That's his happy place, it seems, in front of a camera, in front of a group of reporters, or one-on-one with a reporter. Whereas Travis seems like he really values his privacy, his alone time, his time just to do what he wants to do and clear his mind. Did that strike you as these were almost polar opposites in terms of personality, the head coach and this player that he has nurtured into one of the best players in college football, as you said, that we've seen in a long time?
Yeah, that's a great point. A good observation is that, well, he loves Dion, reveres him, huge figure in his life. Loves Shador Sanders and Shiloh Sanders too, his kids who were his teammates. But he is not that same level of personality. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he's staying at this ranch where this workout facility is, and you look out from where he is staying, and there's a couple of like warehouse buildings, and you can't see any houses anywhere. And he's like, yeah, they're still too close. I don't even want any people that close to me. He's a little bit reclusive from that standpoint. And yes, his idea of a good time is just to go get on the water by himself or with one or two other people, and do that. He is not prime time like Coach Prime. I think that he certainly enjoyed the fun and the some of the razzmatazz of Colorado football while he was there, but he's not that guy that's going to be out like, I need attention for myself. He It's interesting too. One thing I noticed when I covered games out there, and like, Colorado, when they beat Nebraska and the fans are storming the field, and Travis is like, I'm out of here. I'm going to the locker room. Shador's out there with the students and everything, and it's just this wild party scene, and Travis was going the other way. I think he may end up in New York, but I'm wondering if how that fit might be if he's with the Giants. We're taping this Thursday afternoon. The draft, he'll be somebody's draft pick tonight, but he might be better off in a place like a Cleveland, which has the second pick, and might take him there.
Did he talk much about his relationship with Shador Sanders, Deion's son, the quarterback? And I'm guessing, given the timing of the story, I don't know, had it come out yet that their numbers were going to be retired at the spring game? And I think the timing didn't work on that in terms of you being able to ask about that. But I am curious your opinion of that decision. And again, his relationship with Shador.
Yeah, I think he really is very affectionate towards Shador. I mean, teammates at Jackson State and at Colorado, and they experienced a lot of success together. And he stuck up for Shador. I asked him, and I think that was in the story, a quote where, he said that because of the Sanders family and the Sanders name, that people just naturally, there's backlash toward them. And he thinks, people that are will regret not drafting Shador. Because this was this was mid-March. And so like his stock was probably just starting to slide a little bit from, top 5 to who knows where. And we'll find that out soon too. But so he thinks, very highly of Shador. The decision to retire the jerseys, which wasn't even a blip on the radar at that point. We never discussed it. Boy, that was, I think, poorly handled by Colorado. I mean, retire Travis Hunter's jersey? Absolutely. The dude's done something nobody does. And in Colorado history, his jersey should be retired. And if you want to do it right away, that's fine too. Shador Sanders is a different deal. Really good quarterback. Played great for 2 years. Played hurt. Took hits. I mean, he deserves to be really revered, I think, by Colorado fans. But given the number of players who hadn't been honored by the school, this came across very much as kind of a dad power move, I thought. And, it's a slap in the face to the guys that were around in the 1989 and 90 seasons, 90 when they won the national championship, and some other really great teams that have not been honored. So I could understand there being the backlash that we've heard. And, if you talk to people at Colorado, some of the complaints about Deion have been unjustified, or some of the criticisms. But one that I think resonates with people out there is that to Deion, the program didn't exist until 2023, till he got there, and nothing that came beforehand ever mattered. So,
well, I don't know if you remember, Pat, but when Auburn was looking for a coach a few years ago, I know they've done that a couple of times recently, but there was a small, but I assume it was small, but vocal segment of the Auburn family that said, go get Deion Sanders. Bring Deion in. He will recruit like no one's business. He will shake up the rivalry with Alabama. He will bring so much to the table at Auburn. And then there were the old guard, the old school Auburn people said, well, he's not an Auburn man. And you can read into that what you want to read into that, what that means. Could you have imagined Deion coaching at Auburn?
I did imagine it at the time, Kevin, because it was such a fascinating concept,
Yes.
and I think he could have done really well there. I think there would have been people who would have been very grudging of having him there. But in terms of having a personality to go to battle against Alabama and wouldn't back down against Alabama. I think he would have embraced that and loved that. I would think that his ability to recruit Atlanta would have been immense. Although the one interesting thing we have seen, his high school recruiting, first of all, he won't do home visits. I mean, he's done things completely differently than so many other coaches. He's done really well in the portal. The big question, and we don't know the answer yet, is will he sustain his interest and drive in coaching? And now that he's no longer coaching his sons, which I think was a big part of what he's done for the last 4 years, and is he built to last? I guess you would say. And I am a fan of what he's done at Colorado. I grew up in Colorado. I know how dead that program was. I know the energy he's put into it. But is this the kind of thing that he's going to, are we going to talk about Deion Sanders in 5 more years still being the coach there? I don't know.
Remains to be seen. I will say this: had he gone to Auburn, the quarterback play there would have been far superior with Shedeur under center or behind center than it's been with Peyton Thorne in the last couple of years. I think anyone could debate that. Now, look, until recently, the Sanders family probably was the biggest lightning rod in college football until the family Iamaleava decided to step front and center and wrestle away that title. What's your take? Everybody knows now the basic outline of what happened with Nico at Tennessee. He takes them to the playoff. He's not really the reason they were in the playoff. Not the main reason. It was the running game. It was the defense. And then he's supposedly in the offseason, he's renegotiating, which a lot of players do now. Doesn't always make headlines. And then all of a sudden, he's missing the practice the day before the spring game. He's not at the spring game. And then poof, he's gone to UCLA. And then poof, his brother Madden, who spurned UCLA on signing day to go to Arkansas, now he's going back to UCLA. And just to make it even more, you can't make this kind of stuff up. Joey Aguilar, the quarterback who went from Appalachian State to UCLA, now he's going to Tennessee. And there's going to be, again, you don't have to invent stories to make college football interesting, do you?
No.
What's your take on all this madness? Is this just the unfortunate fact for the family that this went public? And how much is this happening behind the scenes? Or is this just the extraordinary and logical extension of the chaos that's been created because the NCAA never got out in front of NIL, the transfer portal, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the logical extension to, I would guess or hope, would be an extreme degree of where this thing could go. It's wild. It's bizarre. It is a classic SEC tale as well. We have our first ever college football trade. We got these two quarterbacks. UCLA sends their quarterback to Tennessee. Tennessee sends their quarterback to UCLA. And the player to be named later is the Arkansas backup quarterback, who's the brother of the Tennessee quarterback. It is incredible, really, what's transpired. I do think, look, the system was so broken for so long, and you've been around forever like I have and seen the various iterations and the amount of foot dragging and flat out fighting from the NCAA and the member schools to prevent the athletes from getting anything until the NCAA just kept getting their asses kicked in court over and over and over again, and there was no choice. And so at gunpoint, more or less, they were dragged into this. They weren't ready for it. They didn't prepare a good system for it. I remember when NIL as a concept was being passed, it was during the pandemic in 2020, and they had a teleconference with many smart people, leaders in college athletics, to say they were doing this, and you start asking them questions, they have no explanations how it's going to work. They have no idea. It's just like, well, we have to do it, and so we're going to do it. And I think everything that's followed has shown the lack of preparation, the lack of foresight, the unintended consequences, um, and the level to which I think the original premise has been kind of abused. Like, hey, in my personal opinion, I'm fine with the players getting money. I am. It was overdue. They've earned it. They deserve it. The problems come twofold to me. One with the transfers, the constant transferring, where and this is where the karma boomerang comes back around on Tennessee, where they basically went to battle to give Nico Iamaleava all the rights in the world and all the money in the world, and then he wanted more money, and then because the attorney generals of Tennessee and other states fought to eliminate transfer rules, now you can go anytime, anywhere, and so this all kind of just came back and snowballed on Tennessee, but you're right that this sort of thing had been happening maybe less publicly elsewhere. Quinshawn Judkins was probably in the situation with Mississippi when he ended up at Ohio State, but it didn't become a public situation. It wasn't declared a holdout. And then all of a sudden we had that and it just exploded. And I think one of the things we've learned is that there have been major um, uh, the amount of resentment, I guess, or backlash toward players in these situations. Some of that.
Why do you think that is? Because, you haven't seen that. We didn't see that backlash as Nick Saban's salary went from 4 million to 6 million to 8 million to 10 to whatever it ended up with at Alabama. We didn't see that we don't see that pushback. We see it sometimes when coaches leave, or more often when they get fired and schools have to pay these enormous buyouts, i.e. Gus Malzahn at Auburn, to use one local example. But there's people just seem angry that these guys are going to make money. I talked to a coach on another podcast yesterday, Rick Trickett, longtime offensive line coach. I'm sure you're familiar. He's been West Virginia. He's been at Auburn. He's been at Florida State when they won the national championship under Jimbo. And he said, he's at Jacksonville State now. He said, I don't want to coach a guy who makes more money than me. Now, he's 77 years old. He's set in his ways, which is understandable. But why are people so offended that these young men who bring in millions of dollars are going to get a commensurate piece of that pie?
It's a great question and would deserve its own. We could do another 2-hour podcast on that alone. But, I think, one, it didn't used to be that way. And so people that believed in some almost Hollywood scripted version of the purity of college athletics, which really had never existed, but they wanted to believe that it did, and people that went to school, they went because they loved that school or whatever. And it's funny, I'm diverting a little bit here, but I did a talk a few weeks ago, and a woman there who played high school basketball in like the 80s, she said, I played for the love of the game. And I was like, with all due respect, ma'am, nobody was going to pay you any. You weren't bringing in any money for your school. So that, it's different. But so one, it didn't used to be that way. Two, the long held belief that, a scholarship is enough. Three, look, ageism, a generation gap. And four, race. Look, I would have to think that's a factor for some people. These uppity young guys that haven't done anything to earn this money and don't care enough about the school the way I would care about that school. What have they done to deserve this? That sort of thing. So, I think that there's a lot of factors there, but it is wild the extent to which some people really don't like this new era. To a degree. Look, the TV ratings are great, the stands are full, but there's some people that still don't like what is happening in front of them.
Yeah, you hear a lot of rhetoric. This is the last straw. No, this is the last straw. No, I draw this line. But people are still watching. They're still going to the stadiums. They're still going to the arenas. As you said, the television ratings for the NCAA tournament, the college football playoff are outstanding. So people are still watching. I think it's all the other stuff. This time of year in this state, people would be talking about far more than they have They'd be talking about Ty Simpson as in the quarterback position at Alabama. They'd be talking about Jackson Arnold in the quarterback position at Auburn. Of course, basketball has intruded on spring football in this state because of the success of both the Tide and the Tigers. That has something to do with it. But now they're all the things that they say they don't like about professional sports, even though they do watch the NFL and they watch the Super Bowl, contract renegotiations, free agency. Now that's come to college sports. And so now you're having to talk about business when, you work a 9-to-5 job. You might work at a bank. You're doing numbers all day long. You don't want to come home and read on Twitter about what kind of numbers Nico Iamaleava is getting from Tennessee or not getting it or getting at Tennessee, et cetera.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it that it has intruded on the fun and games of the games. That it's not fully the escape that it used to be. And it's funny. You've been to SEC spring meetings. I've been, and you would go to those things, and it'd be like, okay, this is great. Hey, I get a chance to hear from Nick Saban about what he's thinking for the fall, and hear from Kirby Smart and Lane Kiffin, and then basketball. To hang out with the basketball coaches. Now you go, and that's all everybody talks about is the House settlement and how it's going to affect what's the roster limit going to look like, and the portal and the business of college sports. There's been so much upheaval, and it's constant. The realignment, is just kind of at times almost overwhelmed the actual competitive part of it. And that, that's maybe the price of quote unquote progress. It does to me, these are interesting stories and very important stories. So I don't mind it, but it is kind of weird just the shift away from covering sports to covering the business of sports.
Pat, let's wrap this up. I referenced this when we started, that journalism is not dead. Your work indicates that on a regular basis. But there's a double meaning here involving another sport that you are heavily involved with, very interested in. Let us know why journalism is not dead on the racetrack.
That's right. The Kentucky Derby favorite, and the race will be the first Saturday in May 3rd this year, is named Journalism. An outstanding horse, unbelievably accomplished so far, from California, who I was told that he got his name from one of the owners, Aaron Wellman, who was the high school editor of his student paper at Beverly Hills High School. So
90210.
Yeah, the children of actors and who knows, movie producers, whatever the case may be. And but he was the high school editor of his paper, and so he came up with journalism for the horse. We'll hope journalism remains alive and well for the next 9 days, and we'll see how he does on the first Saturday in May. But he's flown into Kentucky. He was on the track yesterday for the first time, there today too. He looks the part, and we'll see if he can bring home the roses.
Well, let's hope journalism writ large lasts a lot longer than 9 more days. Pat Forde, one of the best out there doing it. Appreciate your time today. And again, keep those great stories coming.
Thanks, Kevin. Great to be on with you.
All right. That's Pat Forde from Sports Illustrated. Check out his work there. Check him out on Twitter. He's a great follow. Want to thank him for getting into what's happening now in college football, college athletics, the SEC, and the Kentucky Derby. And none of those were actual fish stories. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in this edition of Scarborough Knows. I'm Kevin Skarbinski. I'll see you next time.